What's going on, everybody? It's your man Louie T here on a brand new installment of the Louie T Network podcast. October 22nd. Man, this season is flying by. We're talking about week 8 today, Power Index. Almost halfway through the season. God damn it. Trade deadline right around the corner. And I talked about this last week. Things are heating up. This wide receiver trade market is robust. Are the Rams having a fire sale? I don't know, but we're going to talk about it today on the 460th installment of the Louie T Network podcast that starts now. The Louie T Network is powered by MusicHead University. MusicHeads, classes in session. Turn me up. Enroll on YouTube now. Link is in the description. Who else could it be but me, your man, Louie T? Welcome to the 460th, getting up there, installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I, of course, am your set man, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. How is this Tuesday afternoon, evening, morning, wherever you are, midday, treating you? Hopefully it's treating you well. And number of topics to get to today. I'm really fascinated by the trade deadline in every sport, but the NFL's trade deadline has gotten really interesting over the last 3 years or so, because I think, with the, Patriots no longer being, a team that is running things, it's now the Chiefs. So they just passed the baton to another team, but even they don't feel like a sure thing. They haven't lost this season, but it's not pretty. Mahomes is playing some of his worst ball statistically of his career. They feel vulnerable. I mean, they're still 6-0, but they feel vulnerable. And you look around, and I was just talking to my buddy earlier today, and I was like, man, the AFC is a mess. We didn't see this coming. The AFC is wide open. It's a mess. Obviously, you still got to go through Kansas City. You still got to go through Baltimore, and more likely than not, Buffalo. So none of that has changed, but all of those teams seem vulnerable. I mean, that was a 10-7 game, Buffalo and Tennessee at the half yesterday, or Sunday. Like, these teams are beatable, right? Baltimore gave up 31 points, 38 to Cincinnati. Like, their defense isn't what it was last year, right? You get what I'm saying. They can score, though. Man, can they score? Lamar Jackson, 5 touchdown passes last night. I mean, they can score, but they're the number one scoring offense in the league for a reason, but they can be had defensively, and they've got injuries defensively. And so nothing feels certain out there, and the NFC is always up for grabs. I mean, San Francisco had a sort of a vice grip on the conference, but even they felt shaky. They should have lost last year in the playoffs to both Green Bay and Detroit. So no one ever felt like, well, you can't beat San Francisco, but they are 3-4 right now, and they don't look like the same team, and they look like a shell of themselves. And now Brandon Ayuk is out for the season, and we don't know when Christian McCaffrey is coming back. And so they don't feel like the same 49ers. And it feels like Detroit has assumed that position in the conference, but they easily could have lost to Minnesota. They were trailing in that game early and had to come back. And so everything feels wide open. And if you're a receiver away, this is the season for you. I mean, there are receivers available, and there are other players at other positions that are available too. And part of the intrigue for me this year is that there are teams with quality players that aren't any good, that we didn't anticipate being this bad at this point of the season. And so they've got good players, and if they're willing to listen, that's all you can ask for, is, are they willing to listen, and are you willing to part ways with what it's going to take to get that player, right? No one thought Jacksonville would be this bad this early. No one thought that Cleveland would be this bad this early. Those are two quality teams. That's a playoff team from a season ago, and a team that easily could have won their division and we thought would be competing for their division this year. Those are two teams with quality players on it that we've already seen teams come and pick from. Cooper was traded already to the Bills. Roy Robinson Harris was traded to Seattle from Jacksonville. Like, those are quality rosters. If you get what I'm saying, like, if you think you can win a Super Bowl, and why wouldn't you if you're a good team? Why wouldn't you? There are opportunities for you to improve your roster if you're close enough. I would never recommend mortgaging your future to chase after something that might not be obtainable for your team. Like, if your defense really stinks, is it really in your best interest to go after one player if he's not going to necessarily move the needle enough for you to improve your defense overall? Same with the offense. If your offense isn't very good, one player isn't going to change your offense unless it's a star quarterback, and you're not getting that at the trade deadline, right? So you have to be reasonable. Like, if you know you're one player away, one or two players away, make the deal. You know, if you're the Kansas City Chiefs, you need a receiver, make a deal, right? Buffalo did it. And I could think of some other teams where I'm like, if you're the Detroit Lions, you need a pass rusher, make a deal. Don't let this trade deadline pass you by, and without you doing something to fortify your roster. Now that you have an injury here or there, fortify your roster, go for it, right? Those are teams in position to win and win now. So we'll talk about that. Let's get to the gem dropping session, shall we? I think we shall. Let me drop this gem on your melon. Open your mind. Let your conscience be free. You're now rolling with your man, Louie T-double-E. Let me open you up. Get you thinking a little bit. So, Power Index, week 8. Going to get to that list here in a second, but before we do, we got to go back to week 7. So it's hard to go forward if you don't know where you came from, right? So let's do that first. Week 7's Power Index looked as follows. Coming in at number 7, the Washington Commanders. They were fresh off of their first loss in over a month, losing to the Baltimore Ravens 30-23. But they were still a 4-2 ball club and one of the better teams, not just in the NFC, but in the league. So they remain in the top 7 of the Power Index in week 7. Coming in at number 6 were the Atlanta Falcons. They were coming off of another impressive victory, this time over the Carolina Panthers. They had done it on the road. They were, playing good football. They seemed to have figured it out offensively. And then, of course, this week happened. But at the time, they had been playing good football, and they had moseyed their way into the top 7. They were at number 6. Coming in at number 5, the Baltimore Ravens, as I just mentioned, they had come off of a 4th consecutive victory. They started the season 0-2, fought their way out of that foxhole, and had now put themselves in a position to be tied with the Pittsburgh Steelers atop the AFC North after beating Washington 30-23. And they had been playing exceptional football, and they had a big matchup on Monday Night Football against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll talk about that here in a second. They were at number 5. Number 4, the Houston Texans. They just continue to find ways to win. It's not pretty. I'm going to have a lot to say about them tomorrow when we go slate skating and we go through these games individually. We'll do that tomorrow, by the way, because I hadn't had a chance to watch the Monday night game between Arizona and the Chargers yet. So in order to feel comfortable talking about every single game on the docket, I needed to be able to watch it. I haven't watched that one or the Rams and Raiders. So once I complete those 2 games, I'll be able to talk very candidly about what I saw in week number 7. So we will do slate skating tomorrow on the podcast. However, Houston has been living dangerously this season, but they seem to always come out alive. It's like that action hero in that trilogy series that you love so much. Very risky behavior, seems to get himself into all kinds of jams, but somehow always seems to make it out alive. Speaking of which, can I go off topic for a second? Of course I can. This is why you love me, right? Why didn't anybody tell me about the Penguin series on HBO Max? So we're going to fight here shortly if you guys don't keep me abreast of this good quality TV programming that is out there that you're not keeping me abreast of. That series is amazing. Okay? It is amazing. And I would recommend that to anyone. Colin Farrell is amazing. Anyway, The Penguin. If you haven't checked it out, The Penguin is on HBO Max. They release the episodes weekly. It is awesome. And yes, the same Penguin from Gotham City and the Batman series. Yes, that Penguin. Also, I finally watched the newest Bad Boys. What is it? Bad Boys for Life, I think it's called. It was actually really good. I don't know what I was expecting, but it was actually really good. I enjoyed it. And that's what I think about with the Houston Texans. Like, they live dangerous. And you're like, there's no way they're surviving this. And somehow they come out unscathed and alive. They didn't do it this week, though. And I got a lot to say about them. But last week, they did it again. Somehow managed to come out the victor in a game that they easily could have lost. But they were number 4 after week number 7, or going into week number 7, I should say. Coming in at number 3 last week with the Detroit Lions. And slowly but surely, they're making their way towards the top of the power index. Man, this is a good football team. I love Dan Campbell. You know, I watched his victory speech the other day after they beat Minnesota on the road, and he was giving out game balls, and he was so juiced and jacked up. And I know why they love playing for him, and I know why they play the style and brand of football that they do is because of Dan Campbell. He's awesome. He's awesome. And that team is gritty, and they have a belief that is instilled by Dan Campbell, and it makes them a very dangerous team. And they were at number 3 last week. They're not at number 3 anymore. You know why? Because the number 2 team is the Minnesota Vikings, or was the Minnesota Vikings. Well, Detroit played the Minnesota Vikings this past weekend. Detroit won, but Vikings were number 2 last week. They were undefeated. They were coming off a bye, and they had a big one at home against the Detroit Lions, and it was a hell of a watch. It's a hell of a football game, down to the bitter final few seconds, and a walk-off field goal, essentially, by Bates. But Vikings were undefeated. So were the number 1 team on the power index, who has been number 1 all season. And of course, I'm talking about the Kansas City Chiefs. They remain undefeated. They were on a bye as well last week. And so them and Minnesota, the 2 lone undefeated teams in the NFL, were both on byes. They both came off those byes this week. And now that leads us into our week 8 power index, starting with number 7. And there is no change. The Washington Commanders hold on to the 7th spot of the power index. They were at home against Carolina Panthers, destroyed them 40-7 without their starting quarterback, rookie sensation Jaden Daniels, for much of the game. He played 1 series, attempted 2 passes, had a big run, got injured on that run, left the game after the first series, and the Commanders took it from there and proceeded to score 30 points without Jaden Daniels in the lineup and win the game 40-7. So they remain at number 7 at 5-2 on the season. Got a big one this week at home versus the Chicago Bears, who are 4-2 and coming off of their bye week. So that will be a big one that many are circling on the calendar for number 1 versus number 2 pick in the draft reasons. But Jaden Daniels' status for the game on Sunday up in the air. So we will see if everyone gets the matchup that they so desire. Coming in at number 6 are the Houston Texans. This was a team that has been as high as number 2 on this list way back in week 3. It has really been the number 4 team on this list for the last almost month now, but they weren't able to get it done on the road against Green Bay. in a game that they should have won but didn't. And I will show them some grace and some mercy, which is why they're still on this list, because they don't have Nico Collins, their best wide receiver. He, you could argue, was the best wide receiver in football before he got injured. Statistically, he was the best receiver in football before his hamstring injury. And so not having him is tough, but they still got a ton of weapons. There's no excuse, right? They still have a ton of weapons. They've built this team the right way to be able to withstand an injury to Nico Collins, and they just didn't get it done. And I've got some things to say about that, but we'll do that tomorrow when we go through that game. But that loss was good enough to drop them from 4 to 6. But they're still one of the better teams, not just in their division, in their conference, but in the league. I mean, who are we kidding? CJ Stroud is really good. That's a quality defense. They've got weapons on offense, and they just didn't close the show against the Packers. Lost in a walk-off field goal fashion, essentially. Coming in at number 5, the team that beat the Texans, making their first appearance on the Power Index this season. It's the Green Bay Packers, and they've kind of pulled themselves up by the bootstraps here after a relatively slow start, and obviously having Jordan Love get injured kind of put them in a tough spot, but they were able to navigate that beautifully. And I thought, if nothing else, that stretch early in the season with no Jordan Love, where they were able to navigate it and go 2-0 with a guy that had just gotten there maybe 2 weeks prior via trade in Malik Willis, that puts Matt LaFleur dead square in the middle of a head coach of the year award conversation. I mean, it was a fantastic job of coaching. And they've been able to kind of navigate this whole situation as they kind of work Jordan Love back into the mix. And now they're 5-2. And they're right there, sniffing around first place in that division. And they're a half game back of Detroit. And this is a scary Green Bay team, because you really don't know what you're going to get from week to week. But they found a way to beat Houston, and that's a big win at home. And they had just signed a new kicker. Had it been Braden Harvison or Narvison, they would have lost that game. But they signed the kicker from Jacksonville that was with Denver. Why am I blanking on his name? That the Commanders had signed and released because there was some sexual assault and misconduct allegations against him, and he was sitting out there. Those allegations had been dropped, essentially. And so, the Packers were like, man, we're desperate. We don't really know, if you're a creep or not, but we're desperate. We got Super Bowl aspirations, and we can't get them done with Braden Naverson, So he comes in and kicks a game winner in his first game, and that gets the Green Bay Packers on the Power Index for the first time this season at number 5, slightly above the team that they just beat in the Houston Texans. Coming in at number 4 is the Baltimore Ravens. They were at number 5 on this list last week, and another team that slowly but surely is pulling themselves up by the bootstraps and asserting themselves as one of the best teams in football. After an 0-2 start to the season, they have now won 5 in a row. They've beaten some quality opponents along the way, and this is a Ravens team that looks to be one of the best offensive teams in football. They look like a well-oiled machine on offense right now. When they've got it going between Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson, good luck trying to stop that Ravens offense. I do think the defense is a question mark for them, and you can move the football on them, and you can score points against them. And the question is, can you score enough to beat them? That's the question. So far, not many teams have been able to, and that includes the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who scored 31. That's great. Most weeks you score 31, you're going to win, except they gave up 41 and they lost. Ravens now are 5-2, tied atop the AFC North with the Pittsburgh Steelers, and now are the 4th team in the Power Index. Checking in at number 3, The Minnesota Vikings. This is a team that was undefeated heading into week 7, coming off their bye week, feeling good about themselves, had a home contest against the Detroit Lions. Their second contest within the division, they had gone to Green Bay earlier this season and won. And so they were playing excellent football. And they had this game early. They jumped out. They took full advantage of some Lions miscues, and they were playing excellent ball, and the crowd was raucous, and they jumped on them, double-digit lead, and then the Lions roared back, and this thing went back and forth late in the game, and unfortunately for the Vikings, they couldn't get the defensive stop that they needed at the end to preserve the victory, and so they fall for the first time this season. And now they're 5-1, but they're still a damn good team, and they've still played a hell of a schedule to this point, and they've navigated it beautifully. And so can't dock them too much for losing to the team that was right behind them in the power index. It's not like they went and lost to a 1-5 ball club or something like that. And that's family business. You know what that's about. So Minnesota moves down one spot from 2 to 3 in the power index. Speaking of moving down one spot, the team that beat them moves up a spot, and that's the Detroit Lions, who come in at number 2 here on the power index. Big road victory over Minnesota. That was one of the big contests of week number 7. NFC North family business at its highest order. That was phenomenal football, down to the wire. Walk-off field goal by Bates, the rookie Lions field goal kicker, and big win for Detroit. Jared Goff is on a tear. He's got, I believe, 18 touchdown passes and only 16 incompletions in the last 4 games, I think is the number, if I'm not mistaken. Something to that effect. Or he's been, the general of 18 touchdown drives and only 16 incompletions, something to that effect. I don't think he's thrown that many touchdown passes in 4 weeks. But since I think right around when they came off their bye, maybe right before the bye, he's turned it up. They had 2 40-point performances in a row, one against Seattle, one against Dallas, and then they go on the road and they beat Minnesota. And so he's been lights out here of late. I want to say it was the last 3 games. He's had 16 incompletions, and he's led the Lions on 18 scoring drives. I think that's the number. And that's ridiculous. But remember, he went 18 of 18. Perfect completion percentage against Seattle, right, on a Monday night. And then I think he only had like 2 or 3 incompletions against the Cowboys the following week. Like, this he's dialed in. And the Lions are playing great football. And this is the Goff we saw last year. Early in the season, I was wondering, like, what's going on here? This wasn't the Detroit Lions we had seen, a year before. Now they're playing like the Lions we saw last year, and they're dangerous, very, very dangerous. They are number 2 on the list here in week 8. And then obviously checking in at number 1, the Kansas City Chiefs, with a 28-18 victory over the San Francisco 49ers on the road, pushes their mark to 6-0 on the season, the only undefeated team left in the NFL. The Chiefs just keep finding ways to win. Mahomes was not great. His legs were of more use in this game than his arm really was. You can see they're feeling the ill effects of just not having weapons. Juju Smith-Schuster was injured in this game. And, I mean, if we're talking about Juju Smith-Schuster, you're in rough shape as is. And he's a guy that they were counting on, and now he's injured too. And so they've got to do something, do the Kansas City Chiefs. But meanwhile, the defense continues to be lights out while they figure things out on offense. And it's another game. It's another opponent that's held under 20 points. And if you're holding teams under 20 points on a weekly basis, you're going to win a lot of games in this league. And that's what the Chiefs are doing. Mahomes is struggling, but he doesn't have a lot to work with. And again, it's no excuse. We hold Mahomes to a much higher standard, and he hasn't been great. but this is why football is the ultimate team sport. He doesn't have to be great right now when the defense is playing at the level that they're playing at. And they're affording him the opportunities to turn it over, to not be perfect. Once upon a time, Mahomes had to be perfect. Mahomes had to score 30 in order to win because the defense wasn't great. Now it's a role reversal. Offense isn't really good right now. Defense is dominant, and they're paving the way for a lot of these victories. And I think Mahomes, again, learning how to adjust and adapt to not having a ton of weapons and just figuring it out. And if his legs have to be a part of that, so be it. And you're seeing that come to fruition, and they're continuing to find ways to win. And I've said this is a dangerous proposition for the rest of the league, that they're figuring out ways to win despite not really having the offensive efficiency we've come to expect from an Andy Reid coach team and a Patrick Mahomes led offense. And yet they're still finding ways to win. That should be very scary to the rest of the league, that they could actually do this three-peat thing with them finding ways to win despite not having real offensive efficiency at this current juncture. So that is the list. Quickly, Commanders at 7, Texans at 6, Packers at 5, Ravens at 4, Vikings at 3, Lions at 2, and the Chiefs are still at the top of the Louie T Network podcast Power Index. So let's get to our next segment. And of course, that's social media maneuvers. I'm a midday marauder. Y'all know what it is. If you're out there, you want your comment read on the air, use the hashtag LouieTLive to have your comment read on the air. If time permits, we'll get to as many of those comments as we can. If you want to ensure that your comment is read, super chats are the way to do so, and we will get to those immediately. Those allow you to jump to the front of the line and also allow you to have your comment be read on the air for sure. So with that said, I want to start off this segment talking about the Los Angeles Rams and some of the rumors that are circulating. And then I want to talk about the wide receiver market and trade market and how robust it is. And then we'll get to some comments in the comment section. So are the Rams having a yard sale? I am fascinated with some of these teams, and because this isn't baseball. This is the thing about football. You know, a lot of people look at football like it's baseball. And baseball is one of the few sports, even in basketball, like we know who's good and who's not good going into the season in the NBA. Like it's not like you don't get many surprises. You know, I mean, you might show up a year early, but you're not going to be like viewed as one of the worst teams in the sport and then somehow magically end up being good. Like the Detroit Pistons have been awful for like 6 years straight. They stink, right? And every year they're rebuilding, it feels like, and they're never getting any closer to being ready to compete. That's just the reality of the situation. One year, the Kings kind of came out of nowhere, and their head coach, what's my man's name that came from? He was the Lakers coach, or not the Lakers. He was Cleveland's coach. He was on the Warriors bench, Mike something. He won NBA Coach of the Year, I believe, that year. The Kings went to the playoffs, surprised everybody, but they just were a year early. It's not that you didn't think the Kings could win. You just didn't think they were ready to win. But they just showed up a year early, right? Baseball is different because you get hot pitching. You know, anything could happen. But generally speaking, we know who's going to, like the Oakland Athletics are going to suck just about every year, it feels like. You know, just certain teams that just stink. The White Sox, they stink, you know. And when you're not good in baseball, you're looking to move assets. You know, you're trying to pick up young talent, somebody's, farm system, big arms, whatever. You're looking to acquire, talent for the future, right? Football, not so much. Like, you might suck because of the parity in the NFL. And I always have to say that. Mike Brown. Thank you, Andrew Parker. Mike Brown. You always have to kind of temper your expectations for the trade deadline because NFL teams aren't looking to give away quality players. to try and get young talent or get assets. You know, you're going to have to entice them with a ridiculous deal. And not to say that you don't have to do that in baseball, but I've seen teams get fleeced in baseball, you know, for players in the minor leagues that you're like, good luck with that. I'd rather take, you know, Jorge Soler, right? I'd rather have the player than to have that minor league prospect. But you go right ahead, knock yourself out, right? In football, it's hard to get quality players off of a team because they're not looking to just give them away a lot of times. And even if they suck this year, they could be in the AFC or NFC championship game the next year. And that's the parity of the NFL. And so if you're Cleveland, you could be telling yourself, we're a quarterback away. Like, they traded away Amari Cooper, and I still think they are willing to deal more guys. They're not going to give him away, but I think you can get Zadarius Smith. I don't think you're getting Garrett, Myles Garrett. I've seen his name crop up, and, teams are inquiring. Yeah, they can call and ask, but I'm pretty sure they're telling teams no, because in their mind, next year we could draft a receiver in the first round, a quarterback in the first round, and why can't we be Houston? Why can't we be Washington next year? We got talent. We just need a quarterback. Why can't we get somebody in the offseason as a quarterback, a veteran in here, and why can't we win next year? And that's their mindset. And that's a lot of times the mindset of these NFL teams is no one's trying to lose. Like baseball and basketball, you might get hired and they understand, hey, this is like a 5-6 year plan. Like we're going to suck. I'm shocked when I see guys get fired after a year or two in those sports, knowing that you signed up for a bad team, knowing that it's going to take a little while, right? I think the Pistons fired the Pelicans' old coach that was in Phoenix before he went to Detroit. And they paid him all this money, and then they fired him after 1 year, and you're like, what? You knew the Pistons were going to suck. What's going on here? But I guess they had their reasons, whatever. I know they got a new GM in Trajan Langdon, and he probably wanted to get his own coach in there, whatever, right? In football, you don't have that luxury. There is no, hey, man, we're going to suck for 3-4 years. We know what you're signing up for. Hang in there. You got to win, bro. You got to find a way to win. Even if you're kind of going into a situation that feels like you're being set up for failure, you still got to find a way to go in there and get it done. And this league waits for no one. Like Antonio Pierce, he's so impatient, right? And if he would just let Gardner Minshew play, they'll win 8 games and be in the playoff conversation. They won't make it, but they'll be in the conversation, just like the Colts were last year. They'll be in the conversation, but he's so impatient. He's yanking guys. What do you think Desmond Ridder is going to do for you? What do you think signing Desmond Ridder is going to do, huh? What are you trying to tank? Are you trying to put yourself in a position to get a quarterback next year? Because if you are, then you're going about it all the right way. But if you are trying to win, if you're trying to keep a guy like Max Crosby happy, who doesn't want to be a part of a rebuild, you're going about it all the wrong way, right? And I only say that to say this. Teams try to win in the NFL. There aren't teams looking to tank. There aren't teams, because if you are a part of the tank job, you might not be there to reap the benefits when the thing turns around. Because if your team sucks bad enough and the players quit on you, they're going to fire you. They're going to find somebody else that can get the most out of the players that they have. So it's hard to get the type of deals that you see in basketball and baseball and in hockey at the trade deadline. However, I do think that there's a robust market, and the Rams may be a part of that. So today, we got rumors that the Rams, they're not only fielding calls about Cooper Kupp, they're making cold calls about Cooper Kupp. They're calling other organizations, hey, heard you were in the market for a receiver, man. And Cooper Kupp's finally healthy. He's playing this week, but we can pull him off the grid. If you want him, he's yours, right? What's the price, right? And I'm kind of like taken aback by it. I mean, I get it. I understand. The Rams aren't going anywhere this year. They stink. I mean, who are we kidding? But their division stinks. And I'm like, what are you doing? You already beat San Francisco. What are you doing? You can beat Seattle. You can beat Arizona. Well, they beat you 41-10, but you can beat Arizona. I know you can. What are you doing? Seattle leads your division right now with a rookie head coach. What are you doing? You can win the division. And they're like, no, we stink. And I'm like, you're not wrong, but your division stinks. What are you doing? And I'm assuming it's going to take the Rams are literally a game out of first place. If I'm not mistaken, they're 3-4 on the season. I think they're 3-4. They could be 2-5. But I think they're 3-4. And let me see. If you're 2-5, then it's like, okay, what are we doing here? If you're 3-4, and I think they're 3-4. No, they're 2-4. They had a bye week. They're 2-4, so they're a game and a half out of first place. I understand why they want to do what it is they might be potentially trying to do, which is move some of their assets. And I've heard that Matthew Stafford potentially is not above reproach in this situation, which is asinine. Like, what are you going to do if you don't have Matthew Stafford? Like, if I'm Cleveland and I hear this, I go doop 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 doop. Now, again, you can't salvage this season if you're Cleveland. It is what it is. You're too far gone, and you still are on the hook for Deshaun Watson next year for another $60 whatever million, $63 million, I believe it is, plus the 32 he's got this year. You're still on the hook for like 90 some odd million with this guy. Can you afford to have another inflated contract? Stafford's making a ton of money. No, they're not in a position to do that. But if you're the Raiders, right, and you hear Matthew Stafford is available, and you want to win now, and you want to convince a guy like Max Crosby that this isn't a rebuild, there's your answer right there, right? But again, what is it going to take? The Rams are probably, if you're trading for Matthew Stafford, they're probably going to want a first-round pick. If I'm the Raiders, I'd rather just stink and draft a first-round quarterback. How many years does Stafford have left anyway, right? I don't know. And is he good enough to take a roster with Jacoby Myers is the number one receiver anywhere? Probably not. No run game really rich to speak of? Probably not. So, you'd have to be careful. Like, the Rams aren't stupid here. You're dealing with Trader Les. He's another one of those dudes where you're like, hey, watch yourself. Okay, Trader Les is out here lurking. Watch yourself. Watch your assets. Be careful. Okay. Normally, Trader Les is reckless with his own stuff, but he knows how to take it away too now. They're not going to just give away Matthew Stafford, obviously. But Cooper Kupp is the real interest of my eye, because that's another receiver added to the mix of an already loaded crop of receivers that you could potentially be looking to trade for. So we've already talked about some guys that have been moved. Devontae Adams already moved. Amari Cooper already moved. Deontay Johnson is a guy that I think has value right now. He's got to get healthy in Carolina, but he's got value, right? We've talked about DeAndre Hopkins in Tennessee. He still has value for a team looking to win, right? You throw Cooper Kupp in this mix now. That's another guy with value for a team potentially looking to win. And then all you have to do is continue to scour through the teams that aren't very good right now and see what they have on their roster. And you'll find 2 or 3 more guys that could help a team, right? That could help a team right now. And I'm telling you, like a Kendrick Bourne, for instance, who's on New England's roster. He's coming off of an ACL. He's working his way back. He doesn't feel like an impactful guy, but you put him in the right system, Kendrick Bourne can help. Mike Williams, we talked about him with the Jets. He can help someone, and he will help someone. I really, truly believe he's going to be the next guy to get traded at the receiver position. But there are guys out there that can help your football team. If you're in need of a boost offensively, there are receivers out there that can help. I'm looking around the NFL. Jacksonville, I don't think they're giving up. I'd inquire about a Christian Kirk. I'm not interested in Gabe Davis, but I sure would love to get my hands on a Christian Kirk. If you're a Tampa Bay, and again, they're not giving away Christian Kirk. And I don't know the numbers on these guys either. And keep that in mind, right? I don't know how much these guys are slated to make, how many years are left on their contracts. I'm just throwing out names of quality receivers that can help a team who thinks they can win something this season. Why not? And I'm looking around and I'm saying, if you feel like you got a need at running back, why not call up New Orleans and check on the pulse of Alvin Kamara? Why not? What's it going to hurt? Right? What's it going to hurt? To find out if they're interested in moving Alvin Kamara or not. They sure as hell aren't using him the way that they should be at this point. They stink. They're not going anywhere. I'd pick up the phone and check on Alvin Kamara, right? I think there are a number of guys available that can help. If you are out there, you're desperate, you need some help offensively, because you're going to have to score points if you want to win the Super Bowl. Your defense needs to be stout, but you're going to have to score some points. You're going to have to be able to score some points. And if you don't have the resources currently, like if your team, and I know I was, listening to some Chargers fans, and because they run a tight end heavy system with Greg Roman, they, are interested in, the tight end position. There's some tight ends that could be available on some bet. David Njoku could be available. Hit the Browns up. See what's good. Evan Ingram could be available in Jacksonville. Hit the Jaguars up. See what's good. Right? I'd hit New Orleans up. I like the Johnson kid. Right? And I don't think they're using him the way that he could be utilized there. I'd hit Tennessee up. Got a Okonkwo on a rookie deal. I'd see what's really good. Jonnu Smith in Miami. What's really good, right? It's some stuff out there. If you're interested, Hunter Henry on the Patriots. Again, I don't know if they're looking to part ways with probably the best and most reliable target for a young quarterback in Drake May. But if you're rebuilding, you got to be willing to part ways with guys that aren't probably going to be there when the shit turns around. There's tight ends that are available. Like, this is a robust market if you're willing to part ways with some assets. But what are you willing to part ways with is the question. Because teams in the NFL, this is the difference between the NFL, Major League Baseball, NBA. Like, teams aren't willing to just part. Like, a second round pick in the NBA is the equivalent of like a fourth round pick, fifth round pick in the NFL, right? Teams give away, they acquire second round picks, they give those things away like they're hotcakes. Like, hey, you want one? You want one? You want one? You got a little sore throat? Here's a cough drop. That's what a second round pick in the NBA draft amounts to, a cough drop. You want one? Here you go. NFL teams are, they're looking to fleece you if they can, because they feel your desperation. They know you're trying to win. And unlike those other sports where the likelihood is, unless you're really close to winning a chip, trade deadline really isn't going to help you, benefit you. In the NFL, anything can happen. You just got to get to the playoffs. Anything can happen. This isn't a series. It's a one-game playoff. You just got to be better that day. And teams try to take advantage of that. Like, hey, no, you got to give me something for this guy. Or else I'll just play out the string with him. It's no big deal. I'm not losing sleep. So anyway, I digress. It'll be interesting to see if the Rams are actually having a yard sale. And what does that mean for Sean McVay? I mean, this was a guy that was, kind of teasing retirement and all of that good stuff. And if you trade away, I don't see them trading Stafford, but I could see them moving Cooper Kupp for the right price. They've already gotten a taste of life without Cooper Kupp, so and then Puka Nacua is coming back. They feel like we can navigate. We did it last year pretty much without him. We can do it. Puka Nacua is good enough. If he's healthy, we're fine. at receiver. I could see them moving Cooper Kupp. A lot of interesting pieces floating out there. If you're Pittsburgh, you could probably use a receiver, man. And again, what are you willing to part ways with? You really trying to win this division or what? Because you could use an upgrade. Like George Pickens is cool, and Roman Wilson will be back at some point, I guess. But are you really cool with Van Jefferson being like a top 3 option for you? No disrespect to Van Jefferson, but as I've always told you, when someone says no disrespect, everything in that next sentence is disrespect after the conjunction, right? No disrespect to Van Jefferson, but it's Van Jefferson, right? I mean, what are we talking about here, right? If you're serious, you should do something. Go get your buddy back. Go back and retrieve Deontay Johnson, right? Do something. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to the comment section real quick and see what you guys are talking about. My guy, John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, JP, writes, could Chef P really call about Cooper Kupp? I would do it. I honestly don't believe we need wide receiver help right now, because for our offense, the way that it's operating, you don't need a high level receiver right now. It's a good offense. And my thing is, and Cooper Kupp isn't a guy you worry about in that regard. Like, he's not going to pout if he's not getting a football, that kind of thing. But it's just another guy that you have to, like, we already, I don't want to say struggle getting the ball to Terry, but do you want to add another guy in that you really feel like you need to find a way to get the ball to? We still haven't even unlocked, Luke McCaffrey yet. Like, I just don't feel like receiver is a big need. Like, if you're trading for a Cooper Kupp, you're doing that just to do it because you're trading for a name. That's not a position where I look at it and say, yo, like, I keep bringing up guys like Zadarius Smith. We need one of them. We need a Zadarius Smith. That's what we need. That's what we should be inquiring about. Corners, that are available. Like, I'm looking at Tyson Campbell. He just came back, almost had an interception versus the Patriots. I'm like, yo, Jacksonville was really good. And they're like, 1, we just gave this dude a deal. 2, he's a young nucleus of this defense. No, we're not. But I gotta ask, right? I gotta ask. Because I'd give up a 2 for a Tyson Campbell. Do it in a heartbeat. But Jacksonville's not trying to do that. Doesn't make sense for them. And I get that. So that's the thing. I'm not looking at receivers. Doesn't make any sense for us to go out here and get a receiver. We're good at receiver. For now, we can upgrade it in the offseason, right? We don't need to give up draft capital to do that now. We can do that in the offseason. Right now, what we need is defensive help. So if you tell me I can add another pass rusher or I can add, a defensive back, yeah, I'm interested. I'm listening. So I don't see Cooper Kupp being someone that would be on our radar. Again, Adam Peters needs to do his due diligence. There's nothing wrong with picking up the phone, and if the Rams cold call you and say, "Hey, man, we got Cooper Kupp, man. You got a dangerous offense. It could become even more dangerous with Cooper Kupp." What y'all asking for? Like, what are you willing to accept for him? And if they talking reckless, you're like, "Nah, I'm good, man. I'll pass." Because you also got to factor in age and injury history and how much he's being paid and how much is left on his contract and when can I get out of the contract and all of those things. I don't know when Cooper Kupp signed his extension, but he signed one sometime either right before or right after they won that Super Bowl. So you're probably getting close to being able to get out of that thing without a real financial burden, but also got to look at where Cooper Kupp is in his career and all of that good stuff, right? Hasn't been able to stay healthy this year. So Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Big Money Sonny, writes, we number 1, Lou. Stop. That cap, my brother. We not number 1. Stop it. Stop it. We far from number 1, man. But we're number 1 in your heart. And that's all that matters, Big Money Sonny. We're number 1 in your heart. And that's where it counts, right? Shadow Striker 789. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, bye, Jamin. And another one bites the dust. Another one bites the dust. Ron wants his ring, by the way. Laughing my ass off. Closest thing he gets to that is a finger it goes on. Well, look, Ronald, the only way Ronald's statement about getting a ring would have held any weight would have been if somehow Sam Howell would have worked out, which he didn't. So he gets nothing. The only thing he gets is a thank you from me for getting us through some tough periods as we transitioned and putting us in a position to be awful enough to draft Jaden Daniels. And yes, people are like, look, he tried to F that up too. You know, the Jets game is a prime example, and Greg Zuerlein saved us. Touche. I'm not disagreeing with you there, but he was so inept as a coach. He made sure we weren't going to win very many games, right? So, yeah, Javen Davis. We'll talk more about that tonight. We're going to be live tonight. We'll talk more about Kayvon Seymour getting suspended, and I think that kind of set off a chain of events that led to Jamin Davis getting released. But we'll talk about all that later on tonight. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, C-Mac, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou. What's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise. 2 questions. 1, who do you think will win the NBA championship this season? And 2, who do you think the Ravens will have to beat? Kansas City in the playoffs, if in KC, and why? What do you think the Ravens will have to do to beat Kansas City in the playoffs in Kansas City, and why? Okay. So I don't know who's going to win the NBA championship. Usually I formulate that opinion after maybe a month or two, going in, kind of seeing what everyone's, because, one thing that is really tricky is the NBA free agency period. It's so convoluted. It's weird. I don't follow it well enough. So it usually takes me a month or two just to figure out where everyone is, what real changes have been made to all the teams' rosters in the NBA. Just now, like, the season's about to start and like 50 dudes just got extensions to stay with their teams. It's crazy, right? Like, the NBA is weird. Their timeline is a lot different than the NFL. So it always takes, and I'm so entrenched in the NFL that I'm not paying attention to a lot of the transactions that are taking place with the NBA. And so it usually takes me about a good month and a half, 2 months to kind of get really into the flow of the NBA and like, okay, I see who's really good, who's not good. This team's better than I thought, that sort of thing. Look, you know what it is, though. You go in the Celtics, if they're healthy, they're going to be one of the best teams. I think year 2 of Giannis and Dame and all of those, that's going to look a lot better than it did in year 1. So the Bucks are going to be pretty good. The Knicks are going to be right back in that mix if they're healthy. 76ers are already getting off to a rough start from a health perspective. No Joel, no Paul George, no PG. Like, I just don't know about them health wise, but they're another dangerous team if they can stay healthy. But that's a big if. Out west, same cast of characters. Nuggets will be good. I'm interested to see what the Warriors are able to do. No Clay, that's weird, right? So kind of got to see what that looks like. Look out for some teams in the East like Orlando. We'll see what it looks like, right? But out west, I don't think Dallas is going back to the finals, but they're good. The West is going to be weird because it's ever changing, ever evolving. Like, you got to look out for the Spurs this year. Like Wemby is legit. They added CP3, like a real point guard, which is what they really lacked last season. They could be in the mix, like not to win a championship, but just be in. Like, the West is back to being like a crazy place to be. Like, it's the wild, wild West all over again. Because it's teams that made the playoffs last year. Like, Memphis is back. OKC is not going away, right? They're going to be one of the best teams in the West again, you would think, if they're healthy. Like, but Memphis is back. We coming back. Somebody got to move, right? Somebody got to get out the way. And so Houston's like, well, we trying to make the playoffs this year too. We ready. And you look around at the West and you're like, yo, this shit is crazy. And I'm like, the Clippers, they got to get out of there. It looks like they got to move. Like Phoenix, hey, either do something or get out the way, right? So it's going to be interesting. I can't tell you right now. I've got to watch and see. I got to watch and see. But what do the Ravens have to do to beat Kansas City in KC in the playoffs? They're going to have to be able to, one, do what they've done this season, and that's score the football. Remember, they lost the game last year 17-10 because they couldn't score. They got to be able to score the football. They had some turnovers, some big turnovers in that game. You remember Lamar threw like 2 or 3 picks in that game. Zay Flowers had the big fumble going in for a touchdown. They self-destructed, right? They can't turn it over. Like Kansas City thrives off of turnovers, so they got to do that, and they got to run the ball. They almost went in there and won in the regular season opener, and they did that without really utilizing Derrick Henry because that was his first game in Baltimore. They were still trying to figure out kind of how he fit into their offensive scheme. By the time they see Kansas City again, they're going to have a clear picture and view of what it means to use Derrick Henry, how to use him, and that sort of thing. Lamar was a big, asset in that game as a runner. And all of those things are going to have to take place. They're going to have to play better defense, though. And I think the Chiefs will be, better offensively than what we are seeing right now because they'll have their running back by that time. They'll have, if they make it to the AFC Championship, because that's what I think it's going to take for them to play Baltimore in the playoffs, they'll have potentially Hollywood Brown back, by then. Who knows, right? I think they're going to add a receiver here at the trade deadline. I feel like it's a must if they feel like they can, run it back and three-peat for the first time in NFL history. They're going to have to do something at the trade deadline. And so I think they can be a much more complete offense and a different team the next time that they see them. More like the one they saw in week 1 that had Rashee Rice, that had the running back. I don't know why I'm blanking on his name. And all of the stuff that they had at the beginning of the season. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens. But the biggest thing they're going to have to do is they're going to have to run the football, take care of the football. They're going to have to score some points, not settle for field goals. They've been excellent thus far this season at getting in the red zone and scoring touchdowns. That's why they lead the NFL in points per game, points scored overall, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to have to do that. Apply pressure to Kansas City. If the Chiefs are still struggling to score, don't let them muck the game up. And you come down to their level because they are perfecting the art of winning ugly football games. And like the Ravens they don't feel like they're built to do that right now. They feel like they're built to win a shootout more so than win an ugly contest. So don't let them pull you down into their world. But we're a long ways away from that. But that's what it's going to take more likely than not. And again, the Chiefs could evolve. They could make a trade. Pacheco, that's his name, Isaiah Pacheco. They could get Pacheco back. They could get Hollywood Brown back. By the time they get to the playoffs, Xavier Worthy could be killing it, and they could be a totally different offense by the time we get to the playoffs. Who knows, right? A lot of football left, but we will see. Anyway, let's get to our final segment of the show. And garbage time. Let's do that. Let's get to garbage time. And so it's interesting watching the NFL and, having watched now 7 weeks of ball, and I'm looking at a lot of these situations. It's just one of the things that amazes me is how every year you feel like, okay, there shouldn't be that many teams that need a quarterback. But every year we get to the draft and there's another. It's almost like the coaching cycle. You feel like, okay, there's no way we're gonna have 8 or 9 coaches be fired and have that turnover again. We just saw 8 or 9 coaches hired last year. There's no way that we're gonna be in that same spot again, right? And somehow every year there's 6, 7 vacancies, 8 vacancies for the coaching position. And every year there's 5 or 6 teams that need a quarterback. And you're like, how is that possible? Because you have the established teams, right? You have the quarterbacks that have established themselves. The Chargers aren't looking for a new quarterback. The Chiefs aren't looking for a new quarterback, right? They got their quarterbacks. The Eagles aren't looking for a new quarterback. They feel like they have their quarterback. The Cowboys aren't looking for a quarterback, right? And I could keep going down the list of teams. You feel like there are enough of these veterans that are around. And, the Packers aren't looking for a quarterback. The Vikings shouldn't be looking for a quarterback. They just drafted one, right? And so you go down the list, you're like, there shouldn't be this many. And then you look up. The Raiders will need a quarterback. The Titans will need a quarterback. The Browns will need a quarterback, right? And we could probably keep going and pick out 2 or 3 more teams that'll probably need a quarterback. The Rams should be looking for a quarterback at this point. I don't think they feel sold on what's the kid name from Georgia that was there for 16 years, who's like 80 years old. Him, yeah. They can't be sold on him, right? They probably need a quarterback, right? And if you're one of those teams with an old ass quarterback, you should be looking for a young quarterback. You don't wait, right? Find a guy that you can try to develop. Because why do you think the Falcons drafted Michael Penix Jr.? They have no intentions of drafting that high again. None. They righted a wrong is what they did. Terry Fontenot said, I effed up the first time. That's on me. I had a chance to draft Justin Fields with a top 5 pick. And I'm not telling you that Fields would have been the answer, but it would have been better than drafting Kyle Pitts. And they instead got a weapon from Matt Ryan. For what? We all knew that Matt Ryan was playing maybe one more year in Atlanta. What was the point? You passed on a quarterback, and then you looked up and you said, shit, we got Desmond Ridder now. We're screwed. And so now they went out, they signed Kirk Cousins, and then they said, this isn't good enough. Kirk's 34 years old. How long is he going to play? Don't know. He's coming off of a major injury. Let's go ahead and grab this quarterback because we signed Kirk Cousins with the intent of winning 10, 11 games this year. We're not going to be in this position again. Let's get the quarterback while we're here. They shocked everybody, but that's the way to do it. That's the way to do it. And now they don't have to worry about quarterback. They don't have to jump back into that fray 2-3 years, down the road. But if you're Miami, and I'm Tua probably coming back in week 8 from all reports, will probably be wearing a Guardian cap when he comes back. That's cool, right? But you can't do this again if you're the Dolphins. You can't put yourself in this position again. And who says that Tua even finishes this season? But if he does, you'd like to think that they'll be better, right? They'll be a better football team. And they'll win 7 or 8 games. They won't make the playoffs, right? More likely than not. But they'll be in a position that they won't be where they need to draft a quality quarterback. But if they happen to be in that position, when you take a quarterback, if the opportunity presented itself, I know I would if I were them, right? And these are decisions that you have to start to mull over and make, So it's crazy because, you look up and there are certain teams where you're like, okay, yeah, they're going to need a quarterback next year. The Giants are going to need a quarterback, right? I mean, I could keep going. There's at least 5 teams where you're like, they probably going to need a quarterback next year. But it's every year it's like that though. At some point you'd think we shouldn't be having this conversation. Like only 2 teams really need a quarterback in a league, but it never feels that way. It feels like every year, it's 4 or 5 teams that need quarterbacks. And the surplus in college, it just isn't good every year. There's not a surplus, rather, I should say, in college every year of quarterbacks coming into the league. It's just the quality just isn't there every year. And I don't think this is going to be one of those high quality years. They're going to be maybe 1 or 2 guys. I'm not a big Quinn Ewers guy. They benched him at Texas. Right? Like I get it. You got Arch Manning, this, that. But if he was that guy, you're not benching him for Arch Manning. Arch can wait till next year, right? I don't believe in the Carson Beck kid. He might go back to school anyway. It'd probably be in his best interest. I don't believe in him though. I don't think he's the answer. And I'm not a massive Shador fan, but he is talented. Probably the most talented of this group of quarterbacks. It's going to be interesting, man. It's going to be interesting. But I said all of that to say this. I'm so glad my team isn't involved in that anymore. I'm so glad. My buddy, he's a Raiders fan. We were talking earlier, and he's like, I got a great birthday gift over the weekend. He's talking about his Raiders. He said, I said, oh, yeah, you got the loss, right? He's like, hell yeah, we need to lose to the Rams. They one of those teams that probably going to need a quarterback at the end of the year, just like us. That's a big loss. I'm like, yeah, man. I said, Antonio Pierce's impatience is going to put y'all as a 5-win team this year because he's so impatient with the quarterbacks that he's yo-yoing them in and out. And you can't get into a rhythm when that's happening. So, yeah, Stetson Bennett, Casper the Barbarian. Yeah, Stetson Bennett. Like, you can't be mortgaging your future on Stetson Bennett. He's like 50 years old already, right? Hell no. He's not the quarterback of the future. So there's a lot of teams where you're looking around and you're saying, they probably need a quarterback, right? Does Seattle believe in Sam Howell? If so, then you're fine, right? Geno's still playing well. You got Sam Howell, you're fine. But if you don't, you need a quarterback. And there were rumors, right? There were rumors that if Michael Penix Jr. got to, I think Seattle had the 16th pick in the draft. If he got to 16, they were going to draft him. And I don't necessarily disagree with those rumors. I think they would have done it. Remember, they essentially told Geno, we may move you this year, bro. Just be prepared. Be prepared. But obviously those plans fell through. And look, the Seahawks are in first place. Hey, how about that? Craziness, pure craziness. College football. Let me just speak on that real quick. Then we'll get out of here. I told y'all that we're going to find out about these teams in these new conferences because life ain't as easy as you think it is. And this ain't what you used to, right? I said, Texas going to find out. This ain't like playing in the Big 12 where you play one big game against Oklahoma and then you get to play Kansas the next week, right? Or you get to play Baylor and you're fine, right? This ain't that. You don't get K-State this week. Huh? Right? You played Tennessee, right? I think who they play? I forgot who they played. They played somebody good, and then they had to turn around and play Georgia the next week. I said, we're going to find out how good they are because this is the SEC. Every week, you got to get your shit ready because Kentucky can cave your shit in if you ain't careful. You get caught slipping in South Carolina or do you? Ask Alabama. They had to find out, hey, man, Vandy ain't even playing games no more. It ain't safe. It ain't safe. It ain't safe. It ain't safe. Speaking of Alabama, Tennessee got those boys. I told you that Jalen Milroe stinks. And I seen Mel Kiper's list, and this man is third on the list. I said, if that's the third best quarterback, you guys are in trouble. You're in trouble. Zoinks, Scoob. Glad it ain't me. That's all I'm going to say. Glad it ain't me. Anyway, I digress. Y'all know what it is, man. That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T, here on the 460th installment of the Louie T Network podcast. I look forward to chopping it up with y'all next time, which is going to be tomorrow. We'll dive into the slate from week 7, and we will also preview Thursday Night Football, Rams and Vikings, among other topics. And NBA tips off tonight. A lot of teams in action. I know a lot of you will be paying attention to that. So that'll be something else we might be able to get into tomorrow, some of the outcomes there, what some of the teams look like. So things are things are things are on the upswing. You know, lots of sports for you to be able to digest. NFC East Super Friends tomorrow night at 8:30 on the NFC East Super Friends channel. So that's going down. And then if you're a Commanders fan, we'll be live tonight on the Louie T Network talking Commanders. Lots to get to there. Lots of transactions taking place, including another former first round pick released by the team. Hey, how about that? That's going to do it for me, your man, Louie T. I look forward to chopping it up with you guys tomorrow. You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. Good night.
LouieTeeNetwork.
I actually got one more super chat. I didn't see it. Big Money Sonny, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Big Money Sonny, writes, hey, Lou, if Ron wants a ring, he can kiss the one in the middle of my cheeks. Come on, Big Money Sonny. What are we doing here, guy? Oh, yeah. You didn't even throw a pause in there or nothing. Oh, yeah, Lou. Go Yankees. I think that series starts, what, Friday? Yankees and Dodgers. What a legacy series that is. There was a conversation about what the equivalent of Yankees, Dodgers in baseball would be in basketball. I think that's an easy one. I heard somebody say Knicks and Warriors. I'm like, what? It's Lakers Celtics. What are you talking about? It's got to be Lakers Celtics, right? Am I tripping? Anyway, I digress. The real question: what would that be in the NFL? What would like Dodgers, Yankees be in the NFL? That I don't know. I guess a lot of the matchups that we're accustomed to seeing aren't, outer conference. They're in conference, like Cowboys, 49ers, Cowboys, Packers, that sort of thing. I don't really know if we have one for each team on the opposite side of the bracket, right? But anyway, I digress. Y'all get out of here, man. Take care. God bless. Good night. Yeah, Steelers, Cowboys. You're probably right. Casper the Barbarian. That's probably it. I think you're right. That's a good pull. That's a really good pull. Don't want to see either one of them teams in the Super Bowl, though. At all. All right. I'm done. I promise I'm gone this time.